All right, welcome to our PTA meeting for December. I appreciate you all being here. What I wanted to do first is just show you our agenda for today. It is very simple, not a lot going on, but a really important training that we'll be doing today with CASE. So as you can see here, we'll be doing the passing of our November minutes, and then Matthew is going to generously kind of walk us through some of the things that A to Z Connect does. Mostly this is so that all of us have an understanding of this tool, especially before winter break. This way, if you want to connect with other families or communicate in any way with other King Arts families, this is a good way to do that. And then I'll just touch base a little bit on the bi-weekly check-ins that we've been doing and just gather, if we have a few minutes, any other thoughts or ideas. And then we have this wonderful IEP advocacy training that CASE will be doing and presenting. And then we'll just come back together as a group at the end. So I guess the next thing I would like to do here is, Jeff, would you mind sharing the minutes from November so we can take a look at those and then.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, can everybody see?
Yes.
All right, these are minutes from November, and I will stroll down so that we can.
All right. So if I could have someone motion to pass the minutes.
So I motion to pass.
Thank you. And I just need someone to second that motion.
Second.
And so we second that motion, so the minutes have passed from November. Thank you, everyone. Excellent. So the next thing we wanted to do is really just kind of walking through, A to Z Connect, just so everyone can kind of get an understanding of what it does and get a little bit more oriented to it. So Matthew, would you mind kind of walking us through? And this is just so, people can see. And then what we would love to do is if you have any questions while we're sort of maneuvering around, this is a great time to just ask whatever questions you might have.
Indeed. So can you hear me and see that website behind me? Yes.
Thank you.
Amazing. So I'm Matthew Pearson. I do the website for King Arts PTA and try my best to make like posters and things look cute. I think I'm in charge of marketing and branding is my official title.
Yes.
Anyway, so we heard about A to Z Connect from other schools, and we joined it. It allows us to take basically create a directory, which we haven't had a very good satisfactory solution for, at least as long as I've been at King Arts. There's a thing called Member Hub you may have tried, and it's just not very comprehensive or connected much to PTA data. And we heard from some King Arts parents who had kids at other schools that use A to Z Connect, and even some King Arts teachers felt really good about it. So it's nothing like life-changing or life-altering, but it is a pretty powerful directory of all the parents, families, kids, grouped by school, grouped by classroom that we have at King Arts. And it's all data that we got from the district that people told the district that it was okay to give this information to the PTA. We're not the only school that gets the data from the district, so we put it all in there. And of course, Megan was very careful to make sure that people had every option to opt out of this platform, opt out, of getting emails, so you can still be in the directory, but just not receive weekly emails. You could receive both. And if you want to, you can log in and also control like how you get information. So you can, so we're basically using it for two main things: a directory of all the families that want to list themselves, and two, a way to communicate from the PTA information to parents in a systematic, caregivers in a systematic way. So anyway, so it's linked to from the King Arts PTA homepage, which is at the school website. And, I'm gonna try to show you one or two things and then shut up and answer any questions that people have. So you can link to A to Z Connect. When you come here, you click log in. If it's the first time you've ever come here, the best thing to do, if you've never logged in, you almost surely have an email from the King Arts PTA in the past month or two that has a thing asking you to verify. So if you didn't trash it, you can verify yourself the first time, and it basically just makes sure that your information is correct. And then if you have any problems at all, also you can just get in touch with me or Megan or whatever. So you click log in, and then the first time you do it, I think you'll need to tell it. It'll ask you what district you're in and what school you're affiliated with. But once you do it once, it remembers in your browser, I guess, if you allow it to. You select it. Now I'm an administrator and a regular user, so I'm gonna show you what it looks like as a user, regular user. Administrator, it's so wild and crazy how much stuff there is. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, so I log in, and the default default view is, kind of boring, but it gets you right to what you might want to do, which is search for parents, students, and staff names, which you can do. And it did show, it went ahead and built quick filters for me, like my daughter's class, if I favorited anything. So basically, to Megan's earlier example, if I'm going to, try to get in touch with the cool family in my daughter's class, Stephanie Tenenbaum, there's the really cool Jamie Wallace Butcher. She seems really cool, and her child seems really interesting and cool, and my daughter really likes her. So I might want to find out how to get in touch with her. And so I can click on the kid's name, find out the parents, make this a little bigger if that's helpful. I can click on, Jamie's been assigned a room parent. You could even request to join this role if you wanted to. I'm sure Jamie would love some help. Maybe she already has it. I don't even know. There probably is another room parent. Maybe there is. So we're working on updating the data. So anyway, so that's really the main thing that you might want to do. And then the only other thing, again, and this is the last thing I'll show you all, and then please ask any questions, is you may have gotten emails from this system already called the Digital Backpack and Flyers. So, again, like this isn't necessarily some like slick app like Lyft or Uber or something where it's just like, oh my God, look at all this amazing stuff. But it is such a huge improvement because everything that we've ever sent is here. So even if you're like, there was that attention caregivers thing that they sent back earlier, that's all here. Okay, test information. It just is all here. And anything that is new each week, we send out. And there's a lot of powerful features we haven't really turned on yet, like having room parents. Hopefully we'll be using this more. It can also, everything you can think it would group by. So the default group we saw was my daughter's class, but you can also group by all of the third grade, or you can group by, in any other thing you want to search on. So it does have teachers' emails in here as well. I mean, they're also on the school's website. But anyways, those are the two main things we're using it for now. And we may use it for other things in the future, like events, but we're just trying to, get a solid start here. Any questions people have about this platform, including like literally how to use it? And I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about it, so I will try to help you as best I can. But any questions before we move on to something else at this meeting? We got, I think, a few minutes, right, Megan?
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do.
Ms. Church?
I do have a question. I'm wondering for the future, do you know how I, as a teacher or any staff member, would send a flyer to communicate to families via this platform? Is there a procedure for that?
Yeah, I wonder if that's if there's a technical answer to your question and then more of like a, like procedural one. So that's a great question. So Megan, I don't remember with the teachers, did you send a separate email to ask them to verify their information, or just to let them know about this platform?
I did, yeah. I did for teachers that would have a class.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know if I sent one to all of the arts teachers that would be teaching so many, like doesn't have a homeroom. But that is a good question. I mean, the simple answer, I think, Matthew, is, you can email it to us and we can put it in.
Sure.
But there may be an easier way that you could actually do it yourself too, I would imagine.
Yeah, and Mrs. Church, that's a really good question because, everything we're doing right now is fully legit in terms of like data management from the district. And obviously, even letter of the law, we're trying to be in really good faith. Like if people don't want to be in here, we want to know that and get them out of here. Or if people don't want to get emails from us, we don't want to send them emails that annoy them. But on the other hand, it would be, extremely powerful if we could get a list of every student you're affiliated with. Or I'm sure that, that could be helpful for Mr. Carrillo and some of his communications. I mean, obviously you all have this somehow, but, if there's a legit way and we could input that data in once, because I literally just to prepare for this meeting, just so we had slightly more information, it's just a database. So I went in and I found Jamie Wallace Butcher's record and I said, associate her with something, or I said, give her a role is what's the technical thing. And I said, she is affiliated with a teacher and that she has a role called room parent and it knows about that. But it would be completely possible to just filter out and say, here are all these students who are affiliated with this teacher named Miss Church. And then by affiliating with the students are already pre-affiliated with families. And then, you know what I mean? Like that. So it would be possible to do that. I don't know if you can legally tell us who you're teaching. I don't even know that's exactly what you're interested in, but
okay, well, I can look into that.
Short answer is email it to us and we got you. Email to us with your dream of who would get it, because we can filter out recipients of emails really easily. Like we have a lot of filtering choices that we can use. So we can filter by grade like that. We can filter by whatever,
So Matthew, I have a question.
Yes, Jamie.
You mentioned like being able to send communication to all, like the third grade as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you demonstrate or demo how I would do that, or how our parent would do that for any of the grades, right?
Right. So that's the thing. I'm almost sure that that's not how this system is currently designed. I think mainly to try to protect people from getting, spammed. So I think that currently that would be like an administrator level feature. So okay. we could sort by that, but let's try it. This is exactly what I told Megan. So I just want to be clear, expectation setting. I was hoping we would try something unprecedented and I didn't know. So I'll risk looking like an idiot to you all. And if you feel that way, please don't tell me, but I hear you. You're not the only one. But here, let's try a quick filter. All right. Oh, snooze. All right, so I got all the third graders. I don't know if I can email all their families though, but I could probably go in and manually do it, which is annoying, of course. But so there's one. I don't know. I guess for some reason. Well, let's see if over here too. Email. Let's try this. Okay, I'm going to compose a new message. My role is. Well, I don't know if someone else could do this, to be honest. So. I have an extremely fancy title. I'm going to, I could send an SMS too. You know what I mean? Like, just like the kids, like, okay. And I'm gonna even have my email in here. Next, compose, subject, third grade things. And I'm gonna send it to, I guess it's just like, I could say like family last name. Okay, and then this is the powerful feature next. Recipients. I guess my built-in recipients quickly select all parents. But who is that? I don't know what, there's some filter that happened at the beginning.
So
anyway,
I think this is just
we'll play around with more of this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering too, maybe just even as you built, look like you built your own personal, and that might have been because you're an administrator, but built your own filter groups. I wonder.
Yes, we'll build some filter groups. That's cool. We'll build one. Since I think Christy's here too. Maybe we can build like a 3rd grade one and just to test it out, since we're like you know, 3rd grade's rolling strong here at this meeting. And we could just see if it's helpful. So anyway, okay. But that sounds like it might be helpful to be able to have parents be able to do that. You know, I implied it earlier, we will obviously be very cognizant of any times people abuse the system, but I don't think there's a lot of ways for that to happen. And I think, you know, just baseline, back again to Megan's example, the baseline thing of being able to find out most of the information about the kids in your class, you know, over a break, but then especially life eventually returns to normal, will be so powerful and so cool. Because I think teachers, my experience has been that teachers did a great job of that, but that maybe takes the onus off teachers to have to build that list for every class. And, you know, if PTA has it, that's their preset. So anyway, any other questions? I know we're almost out of time for the 10 minutes, or maybe out of time already. Or just requests that you want to be able to do with this system that we can build.
My wish would be we would be able to build grade level messages, like grade level groups.
So we definitely can as administrators, Jamie. Okay. So I have been able to do that as an administrator. I know Matthew. But what I'm wondering about is it may be possible also as room parents that we can do that as well. Mm-hmm. I just don't know enough about it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for sure. But yes, we can organize that and get, I have set up some like mailing lists, you know, that are just like 3rd grade or 4th grade or what have you.
And then I think the other like wish should be if there are teachers that would like to opt in to be able to send, because again, the text message feature is nice, and there's like pickup times that some of them have for supply pickups and things like that, that they could easily go in and be able to send out a mass like text to the grades if they wanted to, or friendly reminders or whatever. I think that would help, you know, help them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I am such a fan of text messages versus email. I will come down on text messages side every day of the week. Except for attachments. If I have to attach something, then email might win that battle. But anyway, thanks everybody. We'll keep building it out though, but you know, don't sleep on it, on its basic feature. Like you now can get in touch with almost everyone in your kids' classes. And you know, you can also find out information that at least that we deem important weekly. You can, to Jamie's point she just made, you can log in and make sure to set your preferences to receive communications via text, and you'll probably just get a text that the digital flyer went out. Like you literally can't get PDFs via text, but you will get a link to a website that has them all. So that's good. And then, you know, just to be, last thing I'll say is that there's an iPhone app and an Android app. I mean, they don't look incredible, but they work. So anyway.
Yeah, the apps get the job done though. I've been using it. So
that's great. Yeah. And it's on your phone. It's also just nice to kind of like segment it out. You know, sometimes it's nice to have an app, even if it's unnecessary, even if the website does it all. It's just like oh, I'm going to check out my kid's situation, or I'm going to get in touch with that lovely family and see if they want to do a socially distanced play date or whatever, you know. Anyway, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Matthew. So just a few minutes here, I just wanted to let you all know that we had some biweekly check-ins. And I think, you know, I thought that they went well. We had, you know, people who attended all of them, which is great. And I think we're going to continue to do them just as a kind of check-in for adults to check in with each other. So we will be getting those scheduled. We may even do some, you know, through our winter break. And I will get that out to everyone this week. but just wanted to let you know that. One of the other pieces that we're interested in is kind of creating a shared document in which we can put all of our recommendations for books, you know, per grade from the parents, as well as we have some wonderful recommendations on, you know, different tools and resources that folks are using that are helping right through this time. So we'll get that together and send that out as well, but just wanted to let you know that that's happening. I want to be respectful of the time. Case is joining us today. We're so grateful about that. And I know, Carrie, you are leading us off here. So wanted to make sure that, hello, thank you for joining us. And you are just on mute, I think, at the moment, just so you know.
Thanks. Is that better?
Yes, much better. So just letting you all know we're recording, and then also just feel free to take it from here, Carrie. We are so happy to have you and your team to talk through IEP advocacy, and we just really look forward to this. So thank you.
Okay. Kate has got a couple words before I start.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having CASE come today. I'm Kate Noble. I'm the Executive Director of CASE. And Carrie's helping us out tonight and doing a presentation because she's just so amazing at it. But thank you again for inviting us. And if you have any questions after the presentation, always reach out to CASE, and we'll have the slides and everything available on our website, but we can also share them with you guys as well. So thank you very much.
Thank
you. I'm going to open my document here. Okay, I'm really pleased to be with you all tonight. Thank you for inviting me. One of the core parts of CASE's mission is to educate parents so that they can be empowered to advocate for their children. And so that's the point of what I'm going to be talking with tonight. And it's going to be centered around using the IEP as an advocacy tool. So what you're going to learn tonight is about the IEP, how to read it. I'm going to go briefly into 504 plans, remote learning plans, and progress monitoring. I'm also going to cover your rights, compliance during COVID, procedural rights, and a bit of a focus on change of placement and what that means. And I'm also going to talk about self-advocacy tools in terms of keeping good records and some remote learning tips. So I'm going to be starting with how to read your child's IEP, and there's a lot that I could teach you about this, but given the amount of time I have this evening, I picked some things that I think will be most useful to you, and that is to go over SMART goals, which is how to understand your students' goals and whether or not they're appropriate. And I'm going to talk about the 4 boxes model and actually 4 W's. And I'm going to go over accommodations and modifications. So when we think about goals in an IEP, a way to think about it as a parent, as you're evaluating your students' goals, sometimes it's really hard to tell whether the school teams are setting goals that are actually appropriate for your child, that they're measurable, and that they address the things that really are challenging to your students from a priority standpoint. And so a goal needs to be specific. What exactly do you want to accomplish with the child? And this should be based on data and details, and I'll go through that in a minute. It also should be measurable. How are you going to know when your child has accomplished this goal? There should be criteria and procedures and a schedule for attaining that. So in terms of attaining, how can the goal be accomplished? And what will you do to make sure it happens? They need to be relevant. Do they address an area of deficiency for your student? And is it worth working hard to accomplish this goal? And it needs to be timely. There needs to be a deadline. When will this goal be accomplished? And so when you look at your student's IEP, you want to find the page or pages that look like this. And this is where they list your student's goals and the objectives. And I want to draw your attention to the present level of academic achievement and functional performance and say a bit about that in terms of relevant. This is where you're looking at how is your student functioning in a particular area? And this needs to be based on something that is measurable, not just anecdotal. Is it specific? Are we looking at the language in the goal as being specific? So in this case, by the annual review, the student is going to increase his early literacy skills and how they're going to evaluate that in terms of mastery. And you move to the objectives, which is relevant in terms of looking at, is it attainable? And this is where they break down the things that your student is going to do that in service of achieving the goal and how they're going to do that. So for example, if we look at early literacy skills, the student is going to identify and read at all 135 first grade high frequency words. So that's an example of how they're going to show an improvement in early literacy skills. So when you're thinking about goals and objectives, you want to drive the evolution of your child's progress, okay? And so you're going to be looking at a change in the level of mastery from year to year. Your student really should master and accomplish the goals in a year's time frame. These things need to be aligned with the core grade level standards. How are they doing compared to peers? You've got to keep an eye out for cut and paste. I've seen this kind of thing many, many times over the years where a district will literally take the language from a previous goal and cut and paste it and put it in the new year's goals, verbatim. And so when you see something like that, you need to call it out and say, wait a second, did we meet that goal from last year? Is that why you've continued it? And if you didn't meet it, he or she, then why? And is there a different goal that we should approach or a different way of approaching this particular challenge that the student is having so that they can achieve the goal? So do they cover everything that you think your child needs? Now, a lot of us feel sometimes, well, there's so many things, and it isn't necessarily productive or effective to have like 10 IEP goals. Our kids have a lot of things that they need to work on, many of our kids. So you want to prioritize. What are the things that you really feel are most essential as building blocks toward developing other kinds of skills? And are they smart? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this present levels of academic performance. And sometimes you'll hear people refer to it as the PLOP. So this needs to be an accurate accounting of your child's academic and functional performance, and it sets a baseline from which to develop IEP goals. These things have to be based on concrete measurements. And so you want to see things like reading at a particular level, or being able to showing mastery on a MAP score. What is the level of their MAP scores in reading and writing? I mean, reading and math. Things that they can say that are very concrete. They are not narrative. They're not subjective. Okay, and they do have to take in consideration any private evaluations that you've had for your student, and that these goals align with the Common Core standards for that particular grade level. They cannot have an accurate measure of your child's progress unless they have an accurate measure of the starting line. So now I'm going to go into what I call the 4 boxes and the 4 W's. And this is where the IEP outlines your child's services and their supports and their placement, who's responsible for providing the service, what happens during your school day, during your student's school day, how many minutes are they getting particular services, and where, what environment. So when you're looking through your student's IEP, you want to try to find the page that's called current school year. And you're going to see these 4 boxes. And basically what these do is they outline the location in which your student's going to get what they're supposed to, who's going to provide it, and for how many minutes. So let's break this down a little bit. In the top left box, this is addressing general education classes, things that are provided within the general education classroom. Looking a little closer, they are typically academic goals. You'll get fine arts in there, in PE and that sort of thing sometimes, typically actually. And pay attention to this classification, A, B, C, up here, A, B, C. So the A is this student's going to get within the general education, their PE, for example, with no modifications or accommodations. This student is going to be getting their reading language arts with modifications and support in the classroom, and so on. These are the minutes per day that they're supposed to be getting this service or this addressing this particular academic area, and how many days a week. Now let's move to the top right box, and this has to do with the services that are going to be provided within the general education environment. And these are push-in services. You'll hear that term, and they are typically the ancillary services provided by a speech path or an OT. This is where the minutes of your aid are going to be listed. You're going to want to ask the question, is this aid a classroom aid, or is this aid an individual aid for my child? And it should be identified here more specifically. So let's take the speech language, for example. I want to draw your attention to this word consult. This IEP looks a little different than if a student was getting direct minutes, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Consult minutes are usually per month. Okay, so this student is going to get 60 minutes a month of consultation in speech language. Now, that doesn't mean the student is getting it. It's that it's for the purposes of the general ed teacher and other teachers that work with your child. The speech path will consult with them to talk to them about their student and how they can work on the speech language goals within the general education classroom. Now we're going to look at the bottom left. These are services that are provided within a special education class or program. So these are the things that are considered pull-out or separate classroom. And these can sometimes be called an instructional classroom, a cross-categorical classroom, a self-contained classroom. Essentially, these are the smaller classrooms, fewer students. There's a special education teacher that provides the instruction, and there's usually, most often, there is a classroom aide. So in this case, this student, oh, and pay attention to this category. Remember when I showed you A, B, and C before? This is category D, and this has to do, again, with these services are being provided within a special education classroom. And so this student is getting their academics addressed in the special education classroom. And well, I'll talk about pull-out in a minute. So math, they're getting 64 minutes a day, 5 days a week, adds up to 320. You want to kind of, as you're looking at the totals per week, you want to kind of see, does it add up actually to a school day when you put everything together? So that's category D in a special ed classroom. Looking at bottom right, these are the services, again, that are provided in a special education environment. And so what we're talking about here are pull-out services. Is your student going to another room to have individual intervention from a speech path or an OT or a social worker? It's okay that sometimes these things are provided in a very small group, 2-3 kids, provided that those students are at the same level in terms of the kinds of things that they're needing, the kinds of interventions that they're needing. Sometimes that's not what's going on. So you pay attention to that. So this student, again, speech language, not in general ed, so they're getting pulled out for this into a separate environment. They're getting 90 minutes a week. See? OT, 30 minutes a week. Social work, 30 minutes a week. This probably is a student who's getting 2 45-minute speech language sessions. That's what typically that looks like. Okay. So I want to talk just for a second about 504 plans. Sometimes parents get confused about, well, what does it mean when the school says to me, well, we think we can serve your child with a 504 instead of an IEP. And it's important to understand that a 504 is not IEP light. A 504 really addresses the Rehab Act or the ADA. And the purpose of this law has to do with discrimination and the concept that students must be provided equal access to their education, just like any other student. And this is generally done through accommodations that your child requires. And so I want to draw your attention to the fact that there are fewer procedural safeguards involved with a 504. I'm going to be talking to you about rights under IEPs in a little bit. But under 504, you don't have the same procedural safeguards. And generally, that can be okay if we're talking about things that are relatively straightforward. The thing to always keep in mind with the 504 is it's being measured in terms of access. The buzzword, the keyword is access, and it has to do with, is the area of disability have an impact on a major life activity, whether it's their ability to access various locations in a school building, whether it's the ability to access the curriculum because they need perhaps extended time or they need preferential seating, that sort of thing. Whereas under IDEA, which is the special education federal law, this has to do with adverse educational impact. And what that means is, does this disability have an adverse impact? Is my student, if they're not getting special education services, are they unable to make progress in the curriculum commensurate with their general education peers? I want to talk a minute about supplementary aids and services. And so that's what the page in the IEP is titled, Supplementary Aids and Services. And what this addresses are modifications and accommodations. And the difference is, with a modification, you're talking about the curriculum needing to be adjusted or changed in some way to allow your child to learn, okay? And so this often is done when a student is really far behind their other peers. So say, for example, in math class, the students are learning algebra, and your student is still struggling with multiplication. They may be given modified work to address multiplication skills, because that's a building block toward being able to do algebra. Sometimes it's about your student completes the work as part of the standard, but maybe not the whole thing. And sometimes this has to do with like a writing assignment where kids are assigned perhaps a research paper and it has to be, I don't know, 3 pages long. Perhaps your student can do 1 page, a page and a half, and that the writing is on something similar, but perhaps something at a different level of writing content than the rest of the class is doing. It's important to know that a paraprofessional, an aide, cannot modify your child's curriculum. This is solely the responsibility of a special ed teacher or a general ed teacher. The parapro can support the student while they're doing that work, but they cannot themselves modify the work. I'm going to move y'all over a little bit so I can do this. In terms of accommodations, you're looking at the content of the curriculum is the same as the grade level peers, but perhaps they need certain kinds of accommodations in order to access that curriculum. So maybe your student needs to use a text-to-speech or a computer-based system for a student who might have visual impairments or processing challenges related to auditory or visual processing. And so often you'll see students with dyslexia needing particular accommodations in terms of their being able to access the reading and writing curriculum. Extended time is a typical one, preferential seating. And accommodations are part of the IEP. When you're looking at supplementary aids and services page, accommodations are in there. So it can be part of the IEP. If it's a 504 plan, this is strictly accommodations. So I understand that there were some questions about this particular area, so I'm going to spend just a minute or two on it. This is complicated. And again, if people are interested in more specific training in this area, or you have specific questions about your individual situation, you can contact CASE for support. So sometimes you might have heard the term domain meeting. And this is where you have a discussion with the school about what are the areas that they're going to evaluate or assess when deciding what that IEP is going to address, what it's going to contain. That's a domain meeting. If it's initial eligibility or other eligibility, like 3-year reevaluations, or if your child needs to have their goals or services changed, or new areas of challenge have emerged, that's called an eligibility meeting. Or I'm sorry, that's a reevaluation process. In terms of eligibility, this is straight up about, does your student qualify for special education, okay? And they have to readdress that issue as part of a 3-year evaluation routinely, that's part of it. Or if your student is new to special education and you've requested an assessment or evaluation for special ed services. Everybody gets an annual review once a year. They must provide an annual review meeting. IEPs do expire, and so there is a time frame in which they must do these. You also can have a transition meeting. These are sometimes conducted as part of an annual review. Sometimes they're a separate meeting to address if there are particular issues, especially for 6th graders going into, or 5th graders going into middle school, or 8th graders going into high school. You also can have a meeting that's specifically to address concerns about your child's behavior. In these terms, functional behavioral assessment and behavior intervention plan are going to be brought up. A functional behavioral assessment is conducted as a way to measure and evaluate your student's behavior. What are the triggers? When does it happen? What does it look like? And this is typically gathered, this type of information, by a psychologist or a social worker. And then they develop a behavior intervention plan that's in direct response to that information that they gather through the BIP. Now, I could do a whole module on this particular area, so maybe another day. You also can request a meeting at any time for any reason. So now I'm going to talk about remote learning plans and progress monitoring. We're in a strange time right now, and there are lots of questions about, you know, my student has an IEP, but this whole thing does not look like what they usually get. And so is this okay? What's happening? So on the remote learning plan itself, if you have one of these, this text is on that document. And I find it really interesting, actually. So they're essentially saying this remote learning plan is not an IEP. It doesn't constitute a change in placement. In other words, we're not saying now your student is getting homebound instruction versus instruction in the school building. as their placement. Then they're saying that your student's most recent IEP governs the special ed programming that they're getting, their related services during in-person instruction. Well, that's confusing. So are they saying then that the IEP that should govern their education isn't part of remote learning? They're saying in-person instruction and in-person instruction during blended model. Interesting. So does this mean that my child's IEP doesn't have to be implemented until they get back to in-person learning? No. Flat out no. The law says that students with disabilities, again, must have equal access, the same opportunities for education as other kids during school closures, okay? And special education related services must continue to be provided, and here's the loophole, greatest extent possible. That's tough. That's a tough one as a parent to kind of figure out, well, what does exactly that mean? And how do I challenge that? What do I do? The way in which they're implementing remote learning plans is also really interesting. You're going to see on that document what looks like on a regular IEP, sort of a listing of your child's goals and objectives, how they're going to be measured, and so on. And they have these 3 categories that they're using right now. One in which your students' IEP goals are going to be targeted. They're going to work on them just like they would work on them if they were in school. Or they're going to be supported. So they're not going to be specifically targeted necessarily, but we're going to work on it within remote learning activities. Well, that's kind of nebulous. What are remote learning activities? Well, it's sort of like what everybody else is doing, or what that special educator or ancillary service provider is able to do on a remote platform. Challenging, for sure. And then goals that are not going to be targeted at all. And it's because they feel like they can't meaningfully do so. I think, again, that term meaningfully can be disputed. I think certainly if there's some that are very obvious. If you're talking about something like, you know, your student needs support during transitions or something like that, or they need the ability to process or verbalize triggers, things like that. They say that can't be meaningfully addressed during remote learning. Kind of, I think, debatable sometimes. So this also is content that's right in that remote learning document. And they're talking about COVID and about these are exceptional circumstances, that the IEP was not specifically targeted in the remote learning plan, but it's being addressed through remote learning activities. I think it's worthwhile and important to ask, what does that mean? And how exactly are you addressing my students' IEP goals within these remote learning activities? What do they look like when you're doing them? What are they? I'm hearing a lot about social skills and self-regulation goals commonly not being addressed. And you're going to see things on those remote learning plans that say unable to meaningfully access this during remote learning, or we have no data to report in this area. Sometimes some academic goals are simply being put off until later due to the impact of COVID and remote learning. We're going to target this essentially when your kid comes back to school. We're not directly working on this. And so those are going to be the kind of things that are listed as NT. Progress monitoring can also be really confusing right now. I think a lot of folks are feeling like, well, I don't think my kid is doing very well. I don't think they're making progress. And so really the only way to know that is if the district is providing you with information that clarifies that issue. And so the goals and objectives that are in that remote learning plan do need to be directly aligned with that IEP. Again, they should be indicated in terms of targeted, supported, or not targeted. And you'll see a column that says status. And I think probably the most common thing you're going to see with the targeted and supported ones are, we're in progress here. Well, that's okay, as long as you can describe on that progress report, where exactly are you in progress, right? Show data, show an explanation. Where do you think my student is relative to the goal and reaching that goal? You're going to see a criteria column of percentages, accuracy, prompts, how many times, with what support. So that kind of thing should be listed in the objectives, you know, something your student is working on, but they're getting 3 prompts from the teacher, or they have to show proficiency with 4 attempts at something, or 4 redirections, that kind of thing. And you should ask for measurable data. Okay, like a lot of times on progress reports, you'll see things from teachers that, you know, your student's doing really well, and that they've, you know, they're coming along, this is what they're doing. But I think it's important to say, can you tell me exactly how, you know, how you know that? And that is related to data, logs, work samples, assessments. That's the kind of thing that they use to measure progress, and there should be direct content related to that. Now I'm going to move on to procedural rights. I think the main thing to understand is that your procedural rights are intact just like they were when school was in session. There has been no waiver from the federal government releasing school districts from being obligated to provide a free, appropriate public education. So don't waive your rights, don't agree to a reduction in services, and the school can't say we're unable to do this because we don't have the time, we don't have the teacher, we don't have the resources. Under normal circumstances, they cannot use that as an excuse to say they're not going to provide something for your student. Things like, oh, we don't do that. Oh, we don't have that. That wasn't okay before, and it isn't okay now. So here's some basic procedural rights that you have, okay? Your IEP has to be implemented during remote learning plans, and they should be the same IEP goals that you had when your student was in school. You have a right to written notice. This is an important one. It's both a right in terms of you should be given notification. It's also a right in terms of the other way around, that you have the right to ask for written notice. And this has to do with if they're going to change a service, or if eligibility has been denied. If they're saying we're going to teach your child in a different kind of classroom. They need to provide you with written notice before doing so. And this is really useful because essentially what it does is they have to explain, and they have to explain in writing. So it can't just be a phone call, oh, we're going to make this change. You show up, well, under normal circumstances, you show up at the classroom, oh, by the way, we're going to do this thing differently. Written notice is important. You have a right to be an equal participant on the IEP team. So that means you have a right to participate in that conversation. You have a right to offer your concerns, your suggestions, and you have a right to be there. Evaluations still have to be completed within 60 school days after you sign consent for that evaluation. So it doesn't just start because you wrote a letter requesting an evaluation, although that's an important thing to do. Once you've signed consent, they have 60 school days. And the school days piece is what's important. This isn't calendar days. And so 60 days can be a long time when you put in things like, you know, winter break or spring break. So it can get tough, take a long time. Again, they have to review the IEP annually, and every 3 years, they have to reevaluate your child. Sometimes they need to do it sooner than that, particularly if something, some new information has come to the table. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about self-advocacy strategies and some tips. Again, this is one of the core parts of the mission of CASE. We feel like it's really important for parents to be armed with the tools and the knowledge to advocate effectively for your student. You know, essentially, this is going to be something you're faced with for the entire duration of your student's education. And so the more you know, the more you're prepared, the better you can participate, the better you can ensure that your procedural rights are followed. Meeting notes. This is a big one. This is really, really important. IEP meetings those conversations can be really, they can go quickly. Lots of people are talking. Maybe you're hearing terms you haven't heard before. And it's really tough to write down everything that's going on when you're trying to listen and you're trying to participate. And so you're essentially reliant, unless you bring someone with you, you're reliant on the notes that the district writes about what the conversation was. And so when you get the copy of the IEP after the meeting, the first thing you should do, if you don't read anything else, is go to the meeting notes. Make sure they reflect what you recollect about what happened, what agreements, what promises were made. A lot of times, you know, staff are really motivated to help your child. They're really, they have creative solutions, perhaps. Oh, we could do this, or oh, this would be a great idea. Let's try it. But unless it's written down, it didn't happen. It wasn't said, and there's no commitment or accountability. Make a habit of writing an email following your meetings with the school. Essentially, this becomes a record of what happened. And you can use that as a document going forward. It's important to then say something like, please let me know if I've misunderstood. And if there's no response, then essentially your account of what went on stands as the record. You can, as you look through the content of your IEP, you can request edits, you can request additions, like maybe there's an accommodation that you forgot to ask for or that they forgot to put in. You can request that that be changed and added, any kind of change in descriptions or just anything at all. You can put that in your email following the meeting with these very specific things. And again, that becomes part of the document and it's related then to accountability for follow-up. An addendum is something you can write if, for example, say your student is getting tutoring and the tutor has a sense of some different level of progress that your student is at than they were when the IEP was written. You don't necessarily have to convene an IEP meeting around things like that. You can say, I'd like an addendum attached to the IEP that describes this particular thing. Sometimes school teams will say, can we just add that? Can we just put this as an addendum instead of meeting as a team? You don't have to agree to that, but you can. I want to also describe to you a program that CASE offers that is really incredibly useful and impactful. And it's called the Empowering Parent Partners Program. And what this is a group of volunteers who are trained, who understand the IEP process, understand your rights, and their responsibility, their role, is to both help you prepare for your meeting so that you can, you know, develop a plan for the kinds of things you want to say, the questions you want to ask, things you want to be sure to pay attention to within the context of the meeting. So you feel a little more prepared when you go in. It can do a lot to build your confidence and reduce your stress to feel like you're prepared. And then a core part of what they provide is they take the notes, so you don't have to. And they've received training in how to take detailed and organized and effective notes of what was discussed and what happened in the meeting. And then that's helpful because it can assist you afterward as you're looking at the meeting notes and you're trying to compare, well, I don't remember if they said that, or did they say it this way? This person is responsible for that and they're paying attention to it and they will do that for you. The other thing that's valuable is they're just simply another person on your side of the table, so to speak. They're there just for you. It's intimidating, IEP meetings. You know, there's lots of folks, all the professionals, and they have a lot of experience. And sometimes it doesn't feel like a level playing field. It can be really tough to feel like you can participate. It can be really tough to feel like you even understand what's going on. And so that person is there. They're going to memorialize what happened. They're going to pay attention, and they're going to be there with you afterward. They're for you afterward when you have concerns and questions and you just need somebody to support you and listen. So it's a great program. The way to sign up for it is to go to the CASE website. There's an application and it describes a little bit more specifics about the program. And I should say it's a free service. So this is a big one right now, because when it gets to this issue of, well, I know my kid isn't getting what they were getting under their IEP. What do I do? Do they owe me anything? Are they going to make this up in some way? And unfortunately, ISBE, the Illinois State Board of Education, says that there's no obligation for them to provide sort of the exact minutes, the minute-to-minute total of something that they miss. And they tend to, what they're going to want to do, and this isn't necessarily inappropriate at all, they're going to want to evaluate your child. They're going to want to see through measurable data, where's your child at versus where they were before the last time we evaluated them? Have they made no progress? Have they regressed in some way? Or are they all right? Has it really gone okay, even though you were concerned that it didn't? And this is all based on providing FAPE. This is the bedrock of special ed law. Did they provide your child with that free appropriate public education that they're entitled to with that IEP? The IEP is a legal document and they're accountable for providing what is in it. So what can you do? I think one of the most essential things when you're advocating for your own child is to develop your own record, because that becomes something you can then bring to the conversation. It isn't necessarily stuff that anybody else is keeping track of, but it's just as valid and just as valuable. And so under these circumstances, I think it would be useful, and CASE has a template that you can look at online to keep track of the stuff that goes on in the 4 boxes that we talked about before. Kind of, what does that IEP say that they were getting before in terms of minutes and where and who? What was that? And then a column around, what are they getting right now? What does it say in that remote learning plan that they're supposed to be getting under this scenario? It's often different, guys, and it's just part of the reality right now of how they're able to serve kids right now. And so you can anticipate that there may be some differences. And then to have another column with the math around what's the difference. And I'm not telling you this because I'm saying that, okay, you've got a record of all these minutes they missed, and so therefore they owe them to you and you will get them. But I think it plays into the conversation about your child's progress. That can be really important when looking at perhaps new services that they might need when they go back. So these are just some of the top advocacy, self-advocacy tips that I wanted to share with you tonight. Again, I have lots and lots more. And these are, many of them, focused on the current situation, but some that apply under normal circumstances when your kid is attending school in person. So don't give up services or accommodations just because the school has a hard time delivering them. Again, no waivers. And so understandably, you might be hearing from teachers that, you know what, I just can't do that right now. I can't provide that right now. And certainly you can make a decision about whether you think that's okay. Totally up to you. But don't feel pressured to give something up because of the current circumstances. It's important to hold that IEP as it's written, the way that it's written from before. You can ask how the school plans to make up things that your students missing, things that couldn't be implemented. This was written spring, but now we're talking about winter. It's okay to ask, what are we going to do? My kid was supposed to get such and such minutes of speech and they really only got half. What are we going to do? It's okay and important to ask the question. You want to track the type and the amount of services that your students gotten during remote learning. Like I said before, and this form that I described before is on the website to provide you some structure to do so. You always want to request the copy, the most recent copy of the IEP prior to your school meeting, and you should get it within a reasonable amount of time. And that really goes to your ability to be an equal participant in the meeting. You need to have the same information that everyone else is looking at to participate in the conversation. And really, I think it's reasonable. I think if you haven't gotten it, ask for it a week prior. And at the latest, you should get it 3 days prior. I've been through way too many situations where it'll come the night before, even on a Sunday night. That's not okay. And if that happens, it's all right to say, you know what, I can't participate in the meeting. I haven't had enough time to review these documents, and you can ask for a postponement and schedule another date. You should also get any copies of assessments or reports or anything like that they're going to refer to or rely on to make decisions about your child. And so if particularly you've had a 3-year reevaluation, you want to see the speech and the psychological and the social work, the academic achievement. You want to see all of those reports because those inform the decisions that are contained in your student's IEP, and you want to be able to read them. You also might feel like you want to get some outside professional support to understand what that report means. CASE can provide that for you, or we can provide you with a referral for someone who can. Again, you want to track the type and amount of assistance. Oh, this is different. You want to track the type and amount of assistance your child is getting from non-school personnel. And so many of you are in circumstances in which you find yourselves either having to sit right next to your child the whole time or being called over to sit with your child frequently, or you may be in a situation where you're not home. You can't be home. You have to work. And perhaps a sibling is supporting your child or a grandparent or something like that. This is important because when you're talking about progress and, perhaps your student is doing okay, it's important to understand, yeah, but what did they need in order to be okay? What did they need in order to maintain the progress that they had, or to, even under these circumstances, maybe not make progress? They need to be aware of this. How well can your student work independently? Often kids who have a hard time working independently, even at school, it's that much harder at home. And talk to them about how the pandemic has affected your child. We know a lot of people, adults and children alike, are struggling with mental health issues right now. Anxiety and depression related to isolation. Kids miss their friends. They miss the structure of the school day. They miss fun. I think one of the things that I noticed about remote learning is there's not a lot of fun built in. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. There's not a lot of running around, I guess I would say. There's not a lot of sort of aside social chit chat that kids are able to do when they're walking in the hall or they're eating lunch or something like that. And that's impacting kids. Are you seeing perhaps dysregulation that's new? Your child is having tantrums, your child is being oppositional, refusing to log on, not participate. It's really important to document this, guys. So it's not only about telling the school that it's going on, but create a journal or, I don't know, a computer file, get a spiral notebook, and every day write stuff down about how your kid's doing emotionally, behaviorally, socially. Because this may have an impact on, maybe they'll need some new or different services when they get back to school. Or maybe there's something additional that they could be providing right now to address these things. If you're having any trouble with technology, obviously they need to know that. That could be less of an issue now than it was early on, I would hope. But obviously if you're having tech problems, if your student's having a hard time logging on, if they're having a hard time utilizing the technology that they're supposed to, let them know right away. And you can request an AT evaluation if, for example, your child, you know, they don't have the typing skills maybe to do whatever is being asked of them, or the particular software or activity is difficult for them simply because of the tech. So this is a relatively new law. I think it was last fall, last winter, in which parents now have a right to ask for the logs and the notes, the work samples, those sorts of things that are used to measure progress, measure where your student is. And this isn't typically something that's going to be offered up. It's something that you have to ask for, but you have a right to see it. And so request copies of the logs prior to your meeting, along with the other documents that I talked about before. Ask how the school is going to collect data and measure your students' progress. Okay, are they going to use classroom-based assessments? Are they going to log the frequency of prompts or the percentage of completion or things like that? Ask for that data, and that actually that's actually reflected in those logs, but sometimes it can be additional things that you can ask for. And make all of your requests in writing. Never do anything not in writing. That again becomes part of the record. You know, sometimes, you know, everybody is working so hard. Staff are working hard. They have lots of kids to be responsible for. And this can provide, I think, a record and an opportunity to hold someone accountable on a timeline for something they said they would do. Or just to be able to go back and say, you know what, this was supposed to happen on such and such a date and it hasn't. Document any conversations that you have on the telephone with a follow-up email. Thank you for the conversation. This is my understanding of what we discussed. And again, let me know if I heard that wrong or something like that. And of course, always remember the basics, the very basic, which is that your student is the I in the IEP, and that everything needs to be individualized and tailored to your child's specific needs. And this is also true during remote learning. So I've gone over a lot of stuff in a short period of time. Please reach out to CASE. They can help. And with any questions, if you'd like to have any advocacy support, if you want to join the Facebook community, if you want to receive the newsletter, sign up for parent partners or any of the content that's on our website that could be helpful to you, give us a call. We can help. Take note that Kate Noble is the executive director. She's the lead special education advocate and is the person who's going to be there from the beginning for you. And this is the information about how to contact us. And I thank you very much. And I welcome any questions that you might have.
Yeah, Carrie, one did come in the chat. Would you like me to read it? It
Yeah.
says, I have a question about telling the school how the pandemic has affected our child. Who do you tell? Who is the right person to approach? And especially when it comes to mental health challenges.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you for that question. I think that sometimes you're in a position where you're concerned about privacy, or you're concerned about, you know, is the person going to understand and do something about it? You know, I would err on the side of the psychologist or the social worker. If your student isn't getting social work services, there's always a case manager related to the IEP team, and it's typically the social worker or psychologist. So I would keep it in that realm. And what I would hope is that they would provide you with some strategies, perhaps provide you with services your child wasn't getting before, or possibly some referrals.
And that's it in the chat.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I have a question, Carrie.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking about, I think you know, certainly there are folks and there's some of our students who are on IEPs. Let's say that you might be seeing something, you know, in one of your, you know, students or scholars in which you think, you know, you're not exactly sure, right? You're not always the professional at home.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
Can't quite tell. So for folks who might have questions or are a little bit uncertain, how do you start that process? Like, do you first talk to the teacher? You know, I'm not sure everyone even knows exactly who their social worker point of contact might be. You know what I mean? What's the best way to begin, I think, that process?
Yeah, I think it depends on a couple of things. One is, what is it that you're looking for? If, for example, you would like to have your child, or you think your child needs an evaluation for special education services, you're going to want to put that in writing. And if you have had no contact with anyone in the special ed department before, you want to send that to the principal.
Okay.
And then he or she will get it to the right person. And the kinds of people that you can contact if your student does have an IEP, on that sign-in page, the first page of that IEP, you're going to see all the different names of the staff that are supposed to be servicing your child's IEP. And so, you know, if it's about, say, for example, an academic related issue, you want to reach out to the SPED teacher. If it's about a concern about your student's behavior, the social worker, the principal. And so, but I think in general, contacting the principal, you can do the principal and CC the social worker. But I think what you're doing is you're looking for someone who is going to have decision-making authority and who also can assist you in entering into the process and scheduling a meeting and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, this is Jamie Wallace. I have a question to kind of piggyback on that as well. Yeah. So when you're sending that initial communication, and I mean, I can imagine, right, we're one of several schools in our district. Is it helpful to go into that email or start that conversation with documentation, at least your observations on what your student or scholar is doing to kind of help start the process? Do you know what I mean? So is it helpful in that initial email to kind of like share some of the observations you're seeing, or would it be better to wait until you have that in-person conversation? Like, how do you prepare for it? Because like, you don't know what you don't know, right? You just, as a caregiver, you might feel like, something may be off or on. I'm not quite sure, right? Yeah. But I want my child to be evaluated, or I want my student to be evaluated. So like, how do you get the process jump-started so that you're not kind of like spinning or delayed?
Yeah, again, I think that when you're talking about a request like that, it's actually a good idea to list some of your concerns, at least in general terms, to essentially explain, why are you asking for the evaluation? Well, this is what I'm concerned about. If you have been keeping track of stuff already and you've noticed that there are new things that are happening, or you have a new concern, think about it, I guess, in terms of concerns. You want to share what those are in general terms. And you then can have a more specific, direct conversation to kind of fill out the details. And again, I think if it's an initial request, you're going to go to the principal, and that principal is probably then going to go to the psychologist or case manager for the purposes of reaching out to you and scheduling that meeting. And that initial meeting is going to be an opportunity for you to discuss whether or not the district is going to agree to evaluate your child, and then for you to sign consent for them to proceed. Without knowing the details of your situation, I would recommend that you give CASE a call, and they can assist you in kind of thinking about if you're not sure if an evaluation is needed or would be the right thing right now, they can help you figure that out. So I'd recommend you give a call or send an email.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say one other thing. It's wonderful that you have that advocacy group that can go in when you're having your meetings. I mean, that is a wonderful, wonderful benefit, right? Yeah. Wonderful offering that you guys have. So just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a relatively new program. I think we're in our 2.5 year, something like that. And really terrific feedback we've gotten from parents about how helpful it is. And so I encourage you to use it. And again, it's free.
And also, CASE can help draft letters. So when you want to send a letter requesting for an evaluation, et cetera, we would be happy to help you write that. We have samples available and ideas of what you can include in it. That's just something else that we can help you with. Carrie, another question. What challenges do you anticipate as kids with IEPs transition back to in-person learning? Should we contact the school team ahead of time or just wait to see what happens?
Yeah, I always would err on the side of communication. And so if your student's going to return to school, write an email about what you anticipate or what you're worried about. I'm sorry, my battery's running low, so I'm going to plug in. Sorry about that. I don't want to lose you. I think that email can again sort of describe some of the information about how your student's been doing at home and the things that you anticipate that might be of concern. And I think it's going to be tough for kids to go back to school. It's sort of a summer vacation on steroids in a way. So much has been different. And, many of our children have a hard time with transitions and with things that are new that can be really tough. So even if they're going back into the school environment that might be familiar with them, for them, transitions are tough for kids. So I think the idea is communicate with the teacher about the things that you're concerned about and ideas about what you think would help.
This question, this is more of a comment for Megan, the other exec team members, and also our teacher liaison that's on the call too. I wonder if it makes sense, Mrs. Church, thank you for being with us. I wonder if it makes sense, and we can get feedback from teachers and our admin team, if there's some kind of like transition document, or I hate to formalize it, or some kind of like ideas or things that we can help all students transition, because it's going to be really emotionally, I think, hard for everyone. And so if there's any way in which we can kind of ramp students up to that transition, when the entire school's back, I think it's going to be different for the return to pathway. But I just think thinking the total school is together again, I don't know, I worry about that, because I think all students are going to be impacted.
I agree. I think that is a huge thing on the horizon and daunting for all of us. I've been taking notes on what you've just been saying, and that's something that I definitely would like to, bring to the bigger King Arts picture, and bring that up as, some type of transition guidelines or document or process. And we have a staff meeting this week, so I'll try to get that information out and see. See what we can maybe do to help.
As I'm thinking about that, one of the things that occurs to me is that if there's going to be anything that's different from what kids might have in their minds about school, they have their ideas about what is school like for me, and that's going to be based on what it was like before. And so anything that's going to look different that you can prepare them for, I think the more information like that, the better. And I'm sure that's true of parents too, that they know what to expect as best you can.
Sure. I think also, I think we all know that when in-person learning does start, it isn't going to look anything at all like what it did before, because we know we're not going to be starting with just everything back to normal scenario. We're starting with some form of hybrid, and there's just so much up in the air, and that'll be a whole nother transition to another new norm that isn't a norm. Yeah. And so that'll be a challenge as well.
Yeah. And I think the thing for everybody to understand is that this whole situation has required just a lot of patience and a lot of, I think, compassion for everybody's point of view. This is hard on everyone.
Agreed. Are there any other questions? I know we're at the end of our time here, but just in case anyone else has anything they'd like to ask. One of the other things I was thinking, I know we have an email here, the mail@evanstoncase.org. Is that the best email for folks? Let's say if they want to reach out to you, directly? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes, I check that account myself, so it goes straight to me.
Excellent.
You're gonna get the big boss right away.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
Excellent. Well,
are you also able to share your slides with us? Is that possible as well?
Sure.
Yeah, Megan, we can send those to you if that's easiest.
That would be wonderful. Okay. What we would love to do is put them on our site with the recording of this. So everything is kind of all together, just in case folks want to take a look at it again or look at it for the first time.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kate, Carrie. We really appreciate your time and all of the advocacy that you're doing. We really appreciate what you're doing. And thank you all parents for being here and caregivers. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week. We'll get all this information out to you on our site, and we will be in touch soon to kind of keep our check-ins going and keep our communication open as a PTA.
Make a video for the holiday video if you haven't done it yet.
That's right. Holiday video, everybody. Please send it to us. KingArtsPTA@gmail.
Hey, keep that on the down low, Miss Church.
Yeah. But thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. And we will be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Bye.